Jurors in the jury box stage, Your Honor.
All right. Welcome back. Mr. Sarabia, you may continue.
Thank you, Judge. Again, trying to be respectful of time, so I'm going to jump right in. The records. They show, starting in 2000, 2001 school year, first grade, defendant, grades are all over the place. He's a first grader. Comments are supportive. That kind of continues for the next couple of years. Get to fourth grade. Mostly now he's at B's and C's. Comments are still generally supportive. He's clearly got an attention problem. He wastes time, they tend to say. Fifth grade year, now he's mostly at C's. Again, teachers are supportive, which, by the way, again, his parents paid to put him through private school. They did everything they could for this kid. Sixth grade, you see comments like he's not working to his full potential. They're requesting parent-teacher conference, continues to work below his ability, needs to complete assignments. He gets F's in math, D's in science, C's and D's in language arts, F's and C's in spelling, C's, D, and an F in social studies, and gets marked for wastes time. So we don't have any records for the next sixth grade year, but we know he gets held back in sixth grade. So then seventh grade, towards the end of seventh grade, May 8th to May 9th of 2008, the attendance records show he was suspended for a day and a half. Already, he is not doing well. And that would be before he visits his father on the trip to Texas. That later in the summer. The records go on. They're not great. There's decreased performance. In early 2010, which I believe that equate to his ninth grade year. And then later that year, so it would be actually the next school year, or beginning of the next school year, where his father commits suicide. Now, is that sad? Is it tragic? Sure it is. Does that mean you get to kill 4 people? No. And we'll talk about it a little more. But 2011, in March, he gets suspended for 10 days. And then in October of 2011, he gets suspended for 2 days. Remember, his parents went in to try to make sure that he did not get expelled. He rewarded them by getting suspended again and getting expelled. In fact, you can see some attendance records where student did not go home last night and did not come to school. Student is 18. Mom doesn't know where he is. He didn't come home last night. You see a couple of notes like that. Because that's what this defendant was putting his mother through and the school. And you can see from those records, it's actually, I believe, page 265 of the Metro Health records, if you're interested, that the defendant's first daughter, Mackenzie, is born September 20th of 2012, which means that he had already gotten Caitlin pregnant 9 months before that, and that relationship went badly. So, some of these slides. October 13, 2012 through October 16, 2012. The defendant checks himself into whatever hospital this is, Metro Health. I'm going to call it Metro Health. He claims he's having suicidal thoughts. He's feeling, see what he says on this particular slide. He came in with bruising all over his body due to his wife and him having physical arguments. Now keep in mind, this is Caitlin. This is his first wife. This is not Jamie. Patient states that him and his wife have been having physical arguments over the comments he makes. Patient wants to kill himself, has no plan. Patient doesn't want to harm anybody else. Patient also with black eye and bruise on left forearm. Patient states they are from his wife. Per patient, wife is not abusive. He is abusive to her. We go through these records where we see it. Now, remember too, when he's talking to Detective Anderson, he admits to this. He agrees that he abused Caitlin. He was the bad guy in that relationship. More records from this visit. Patient feeling depressed due to having a lot of fights with wife. few days ago, attempted to take pills and suicide attempt was stopped by wife before he could take them. See, it's all a manipulation tactic with him. He's throwing a fit and forcing other people to take care of him, like Caitlin. Had a fight with wife yesterday, punched her during the fight. And then denies history of alcohol use, other stuff. Denies drug use, although we know that's not true. And then we get, again, same visit. And about middle of the paragraph, wanted to enroll an anger management program to get a better control of things going on in his life. 3-week-old baby, new house, recently married. Was also concerned that the argument with his wife 3 days ago escalated into physical violence, expressed that he would never do anything to hurt her and that he only grabbed her and slapped her a few times. And then another part of that visit, and this is kind of in the middle of the thought, but on October, they didn't put the date, but October of 2012, clearly before this visit, patient's wife came into the emergency department stating that she had had a physical altercation with her husband. Wife reports being pushed by a patient and hitting her head. Wife was given pain medication and discharged to home from emergency department. So we see who the problem is here. And again, there's more things like that in those records. I submit to you that you can't go through 6,000 pages of records. That's why I have done it for you. October 27th, so still with Caitlin. This is probably the end of being with Caitlin. Defendant goes to Parma Community Hospital for a cut on his fourth finger because he punched a glass, causing it to break, cutting his finger. This was the incident where it got really bad and he choked her, but you see, like, he had cuts on his finger. And notice here, it says, it's a little harder to read than I'd hoped, but they're waiting to take him into custody on this set. It says the police department is waiting to take him into custody. And it's my eyes are not as good as they used to be. So I apologize for that. That makes me concerned about some of the rest of these slides. Yeah, right there. So where it says disposition physician, you go down about 3 lines and it says disposition, discharged from the emergency department. Condition good, discharged to police custody. That's the end of the relationship with Kate. Remember that he broke a glass over her head? Well, this was the result. He went to the emergency department to get his hand fixed. There you go. Notice too, this is all before the head injury. Because on December 15, 2012, he comes in with this head injury. How did it happen? Well, he says he doesn't remember, but his friend was there and reported that they were at the East 93rd Street gas station, and the defendant saw a friend who owed him money. His friend reported that the defendant and the friend got into a fight over the money. And you can look through other parts of the records, but the other guy swung at the defendant, causing him to fall and hit his head on the ground. And he lost consciousness for 10 seconds. That's the defendant trying to muscle up money from somebody. That's why he got a head injury, because he's going around being violent. And also in this visit, he reports, I don't have a home, I bounce around, I'm staying with a friend. The relationship with Caitlin had ended by now. Remember, they were only together for a month or 2 after the baby was born, and she got out because she saw the writing on the wall. So, he was the same person before the head injury that he was after the head injury. A couple other fun things in this period of the records, if you happen to look. Defendant admits to being a daily marijuana smoker, things of that nature. So we know the defendant, at this point, he's homeless. He's homeless because he chooses to be so, and really bouncing around at friends' houses. But eventually, July 2015, we know that he meets, and this is actually in the records, didn't put this on a slide for you, but it's in there, that he moved to Florida in July of 2015. In July 2015, he'd go to West Palm Beach to live with Richard, out of the kindness of Richard's heart. He is taking in this defendant, who is Nick's friend. Remember, Jamie, he meets Jamie through Nick. He's now both of their friends, but they don't get married yet. Jamie's not pregnant yet. Because we know that he marries Jamie in November 2015. So in December 21st, 2015, now you heard from Tammy Fox. She was one of the Zoom officers. What'd she tell us? She responded to a situation where Jamie was suicidal, and they took Jamie to the hospital. There was no domestic violence. So again, just bashing Jamie. Then we heard from Scott Thomas, who told us January 3rd, 2016, again, still in Florida. Jamie is 5 months pregnant, which again, you can do the math there. She's only been 18 for 4 months at that point. So the defendant had impregnated another 17-year-old, and she is suicidal. So
Non-statutory aggravation.
Overruled.
she is taken to the hospital. Again, nobody says anything about domestic violence there. Remember, Richard's around. Richard's there. So then in January 2016, after that visit, the defendant and Jamie moved back to Ohio, and now they're living with Laura. So again, two of the people that this defendant killed, and even the third one, they all took him in. They treated him like family. They helped support him. So, April 27th. We heard from Officer Sestak of the Cleveland Police Department, April 27th, 2016, about 4 a.m. Now, keep in mind, this would have been like right after Bella is born. They're called. There's an incident. And remember, Jamie was saying then that the defendant attacked her and choked her until she urinated on herself. Now, remember, too, this is actually in the, I believe that the officer testified about this, that like the defendant was claiming that Jamie attacked him and pepper sprayed him. Well, remember, we have some insight into this. Paul and Lisa Svensson told us that they went over and they smelled pepper spray. This is that incident. Baby just been born. So what's going on here? What's interesting about that? Jamie went to the hospital. Jamie's not there. Paul and Lisa get there because law enforcement has told them to come pick up the child. Well, that's interesting. The defendant's still there. Why do they need to pick up the child if the defendant's still there? So, of course there was a smell of pepper spray. The defendant choked Jamie until she urinated on herself. And what do we have to show us that? Well, what do we know? The defendant has told us that he choked Jamie in her final hours. He told us that he choked Jamie. This is his go-to. This is what he's been doing all along. Watch as the records progress. May 12, 2016. Kind of interesting, and I plugged that in so you can see. Oh, I'm sorry. This one's actually from August 10th of 2016, just a FYI. There at the bottom, the defendant said he attended to 11th grade and dropped out when parents kicked him out of the house, was kicked out for smoking weed. Just to be clear, that we all know what the reason was. He also, clearly he couldn't keep a job for more than a couple months, but he knew why he got kicked out. He knew the reason why he decided to live homeless, smoking weed. They would have taken him back. He just needed to not be a criminal, which is not unreasonable. So this should be May 12, 2016. And here we have the defendant saying He feels like a terrible person, all that stuff. He often gets angry and sad. Defendant has been feeling that way for a long time. A year ago, he was homeless for 6 to 8 months. Has been married since November 2015. There you go, in case you're wondering where it is in the record. Baby is 2 weeks old. So we know, I believe maybe the next slide, he says, yes. So there at the bottom, he says, last time with marijuana was January 2016. He's been studying for religion. He used to use it daily, quit cold turkey, and after quitting was more irritable and angry. Plus, let's go up above. Again, this is May 12, 2016. He says, have you ever been a victim of physical, sexual, emotional abuse? No. Have you ever been physically, sexually, emotionally abused by, or have you ever physically, sexually, emotionally abused another person? He claims no. And have you ever witnessed? Well, he says saw fights in jail, so he's responding, but he is not a victim of physical abuse. So then we get Sergeant Dale Carlton, you heard from the defense. August 28th of 2016, he said he responded and Jamie was sitting on top of the defendant and he was holding her arms. What's interesting about that is that he agreed that Jamie said that the defendant had been beating her for the past year. A couple days earlier, the defendant grabbed her arms and twisted them while she was driving, causing the car to spin out. You may remember now which of these this was. And then that day, August 28th, she told the defendant she was leaving. He got upset, grabbed her, and began to choke her. There's that choking again. Now, it's a shame. She told the defendant she was leaving. Oh, that she could have been as strong as Lisa Svensson at this time. Oh, that she could have left this defendant at that time. So then we end up, and they start to get hard to read. This one is from September 4th, 2016. So, the paragraph says, history of violence or victimization. Patient has been physically, verbally, and emotionally abusive to his wife for the past year. Patient states that he will grab her so hard that he leaves bruises and has hit and choked her in the past. History of trauma or abuse, him, patient denies. Right there in black and white. That's him alone talking to medical professionals. And their family, which you see again, patient states, he is not close with his mother or stepfather after he was kicked out at the age of 18 once his parents discovered he was smoking marijuana. Except that we know that Paul and Lisa Svensson have still been doing everything they can to support him and even helped the defendant and Jamie move in and even came and helped them with the baby months before this. That's the kind of gratitude they get. If you look through the records, you'll see he's discharged from this day on September 17, 2016. Well, then we move and we heard from Officer Zimmerman and Officer Adams. The defense called them. They described October 5th of 2016. Law enforcement gets there and the defendant is feeling suicidal. He wants to go to the hospital. So they take him right to the hospital. Once he has gone to the hospital, Jamie says she's hysterical. She doesn't want the defendant to get in trouble, but she says that they had an argument. And during the argument, the defendant choked her, threw her against the wall, and bit her on the left shoulder. And I think you even have photographs that the defense entered from this. I think there's a photograph of a bite on her, Jamie's shoulder, and the defendant has injuries as well, which of course he does if he's choking her. I don't remember now if I switched the slides. Oh, look at that, I blew it up for you guys. I went and bothered to get close. And just so you want to know where this is, it's between page 33 and 35 of 229 on these records, which would make it 34. You can't read the 34 though, so I helped you out. But yeah, if you couldn't read it before, there it is. History of violence victim is a patient has been physically, verbally, and emotionally abusive to his wife for the past year. Patient states that he will grab her so hard that he leaves bruises and has hit and choked her in the past. And he lost his job at the end of July. That would coordinate with the Chuppas. And then this slide, same period of hospitalization. Defendant states, I am a horrible person. I am mentally and physically abusive to his wife. He feels his anger gets out of control. He claims he overdosed with intent to kill himself. Reports depression for 2 months since losing his job for arguing with the owner. That's the Chuppas. That's why he lost the job, for arguing with the owner. He said. And then states that he has been angry his whole life. He was homeless in the past before he was married. He's been married since November. He reports a good relationship with his wife when he is not abusive. He wants to learn to control his anger and not abuse his wife. He denies abuse as a child or an adult. But he says, again, Ms. Benson, Paul, and Lisa are good people. Recent THC use, once recently. He reports rage episodes, has abused a dog in the past, has physically abused his wife. He was kicked out of his parents' home for using weed. So that's what a record for October 5th looked like. That's what the defendant says about what's been going on in that home with Jamie for that period of time. And he gets discharged from that stay October 12th, 2016. Actually goes into custody again because there was the domestic violence incident. And then he goes back to Parma Hospital when he gets out of custody. But he ends up moving, or I'm sorry, there is a February 15, 2017, he has a visit, and here you can see just interesting information. He says, no real, this is the wrong one. Is this? No, I'm sorry, this is still from October 5th and 6th. Up at the top. Patient, police tell me that our patient punched his wife and she is 14 weeks pregnant and was taken to Metro. Police states that she too has scratch marks and bite marks all over arms and neck, just as the patient does. And then we can go back to the bottom here, which is actually on the 6th, I'm making this note. Patient wife called requesting to speak to the patient. Wife informed he is not allowed to take any calls at the time. If you read the other notes, he doesn't want to talk to her. Patient's wife asked that I pass a message to the patient. Their daughter was seen in the emergency department for a dislocated elbow, but is fine now. Why is she telling him that? Patient performed the message, stated that his wife is an effing liar, and there's no way that could have happened. Why is he saying that? She's trying to indicate to him, you did hurt the child. And he's lashing out, no, you're a liar. So then the next record after that, patient verified his daughter's name and date and birth date, was informed that she was, in fact, seen in the emergency department for an elbow dislocation. Now patient's requesting a phone call to his wife. And now February 15th. It's interesting at the bottom, last couple sentences. Not really anxious, no real conflicts with wife. Wife has her mother, who is supportive of their family. What Laura got for being supportive of this defendant and the family that Jamie was trying to keep was hammer blows to the head. Mother-in-law takes either his wife or his daughter from time to time. And March 2nd, 2017, if you look through the records, you can see it's another, the defendant calls 911, says he's thinking about suicide. They come, they get him. And he says, when they go through the checklist with him, specify screen, is he safe at home? Yes. Afraid of someone hurting you? No. Suspected abuse or neglect? No. And if you read through the other of those records, you'll see that the issue was, he says the issue was a recent breakup and verbal fight with wife. Lo and behold, his wife comes to his bedside to make sure he's okay. Records show that. And then later he says he worked it out with his wife and he feels much better now. Manipulation. When he's violent, when he's nasty, when he causes problems, when he might be in danger of arrested, now he's suicidal. And then, oh, poor Shelby. All right. So those are the highlights of the records. There's a lot of other stuff in there. But again, I think I went through about 13 or 14 pages. I'm not going to sit here and go through 200 pages with you. And certainly there's points in there where the defendant does allege abuse. There's points in there where he blames Jamie for this, blames Jamie for that. But you see very clearly that there is also a recognition of his responsibility, and he chokes her. What do you think she's going to do when he chokes her, which he ultimately does? She's going to scratch him, because that's the only way she can survive. And I suspect if we'd have seen this defendant shortly after he killed Jamie Ivancic and she's dead in the bathtub, that we would have seen a lot of scratch marks then too. So now let's look at the mitigators. Well, before we get there, one thing I did want to say. Paul and Lisa Svensson again. Great people. Lisa Svensson escaped a horrible situation for the better of her child. If only Jamie had been so lucky. But one thing that they said, both of them said that the defendant called them in January 2018 for help. Well, we fleshed that out a little bit. The help he needed was, they didn't know it, but he killed Jamie, and he needed someone to help him watch his kids. So, going through the mitigators. The things you will be instructed about. Number one, first-degree murder was committed while Shelby Nealy was under the influence of extreme mental or emotional disturbance. So I submit to you, I don't even know that that's established. I guess if we look at what Dr. Campbell said, that he was going through paranoia in between killing Jamie and killing Richard, Laura, and Nick, I guess we could try and shoehorn extreme mental or emotional disturbance in there, but do you get credit for being on the run? And again, it's not paranoid if it's legitimate. He's afraid he's going to get caught. That's actually the motive why he kills them. He is afraid he's going to get caught, and that should be some sort of influence of extreme mental or emotional disturbance. I tell you, that's not established. If it is established to any extent, it weighs nothing. The next point of mitigation, the capacity of the defendant to appreciate the criminality of his conduct or to conform his conduct to the requirements of law was substantially impaired. So, you guys go by what you remember, but I don't recall any evidence of that whatsoever. There is nothing that said that he wasn't, in fact, I believe Detective Anderson went through those questions with him, that he wasn't fully in control of his faculties, that over the course of time that he thought and planned about doing this and executing it, that he did not completely understand what he was doing. In fact, he mentions it. He talks about with Detective Anderson about, death penalty could be on the table. It was really bad. He understands what he's doing, and he has every ability to behave himself. So I submit to you again, that is not established. And to the extent that it could be, that it doesn't weigh a thing. Third mitigator. Defendant's age at the time of the crime. So he was 25 years old. 25 years old, like he's an adult. He's a man. Brain is fully formed, all that stuff, as if that would even matter. But he's been living on his own for a while. He's made a lot of bad decisions up to then. But I submit to you, there's nothing really about his age when this happened that mitigates. And to the extent that it might, it doesn't weigh even enough to begin to start to touch one of the aggravators. So the existence of any other factors in Shelby Nealy's character background or life or the circumstances of the offense that would mitigate against the imposition of the death penalty. So I can only address the ones that are provided and that I can think of. Doesn't mean that there's not more, and it doesn't mean that if there are, that they weigh anything or that they outweigh any of these. But I'm going to go through the list of suggested mitigators. So, 1, Shelby Nealy immediately gave up his right to remain silent when he was arrested. I'm actually going to combine this one with a couple of the others. Number 2, Shelby Nealy immediately confessed the murder of Richard Ivancic, Laura Ivancic, and Nicholas Ivancic. Number 3, Shelby Nealy immediately confessed to killing Jamie Ivancic, which was unsolved. Number 4, Shelby Nealy pled guilty and accepted responsibility for the 3 murders in this case. And number 5, Shelby Nealy pled guilty to the lesser offense of manslaughter for Jamie Ivancic. We'll talk about those in a group. First, the confession. Did he waive his rights? Sure he did. Did he confess? Sure he did. But number 1, why did he do that? Because he thought he was caught. He thought the game was already over. And now, at that point, control the narrative. Enjoy the attention. Enjoy the publicity. I mean, there's a couple times that here first as being a high-profile case. I'm kind of excited about that. What he did not do was, after he killed Jamie, drive to the police station and turn himself in then. That might have been an impressive confession. Or, after he killed Richard, say, you know, I shouldn't have done that, and confess then. No. They track him down in Ohio. They put him in handcuffs. They take him to the police station. He thinks the jig is up. And he's not wrong. Like, he was dead in the water at that point, regardless. So once he's caught, once the game is over, he confesses. Now, and Detective Anderson said a lot of nice things to him. It's all for purposes of trying to get as much information from him as possible. They're all interview techniques. He says nice things like, well, you know, it's nice. We all have theories, and it's good to know. It's nice to hear it from the defendant. Like, he's buttering him up, and this defendant is absolutely eating it up. It works. It's great. Detective Anderson did a fantastic job with this case in multiple respects, especially in talking to the defendant. So, do we really give the defendant a lot of weight for confessing? And I submit to you, maybe we give him a little weight. But it doesn't touch a single one of these aggravators. It doesn't weigh nearly to any of these aggravators. And now, guilty plea and accepting responsibility. So, and again, we spent a lot of time presenting, and I went through a lot of the evidence in this case. Which is one of the reasons I did that. Because before we even get to the confession, before we even admitted the confession, it was very, very clear that this defendant was guilty. We could try this case without the confession and still prove him guilty beyond reasonable doubt all day long. Why does he plead guilty? It's his only option. There's strategic reasons, I'm sure, for doing it, but he pleads guilty in 2023, December of 2023, 4 years later. Not exactly running to the, hey, I'm sorry, I'm taking responsibility. So do we really give him a lot of weight for that? I submit to you, no. We could have done this whole process with or without his guilty plea. Next one. Shelby Nealy's mother experienced domestic violence before, during, and after Shelby's birth and had to escape that relationship. Now, completely agree that that happened. No disagreement there. But what does it really mitigate for this defendant? Lisa Svensson is not on trial here. If she was, potentially a decent mitigator for her. Still wouldn't weigh nearly as much as any of these things. But for the defendant, he wasn't even old enough to remember or experience any of that stuff. Thankfully. And because his mother made sure of that. But so do we weigh heavily or at all those facts? Number 7, Shelby Nealy was sexually abused by his stepmother at age 15. Well, let's talk about that for a minute. The only one who says that is the defendant. The only one that he appears to initially say it to is Dr. Campbell. And then, Dr. Holmes. And then they compare notes, and then Dr. Campbell asks him about it. I mean, there are many contacts this guy has with medical professionals about mental health. And he is wearing his sleeve, his emotions on his sleeve all the time. That never comes up. And honestly, it sounds more like a porno fantasy of this defendant's than it does reality. So I submit to you.
Denigration and mitigation.
Overruled.
I submit to you that that has not been established. It probably didn't happen. And even if it did, not once does he talk about it or bring it up in any up until 2023. So clearly was not a significant factor. And they say sexually abused, and sure, an adult should not be having sex with a 15-year-old child. But I don't know that it was something, if it happened, that he was against or that he was upset about. So again, no weight. Shelby Nealy's biological father had rejected him and abandoned him as a child. Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I would give him, so I'd lump that with number 9. Shelby Nealy's father, biological father, committed suicide one day after his 17th birthday, and Shelby was inconsolable and believed it was his fault. Now, no doubt about it. Bobby Nealy sounds like a terrible human being. He didn't kill 4 people, but glad that Lisa Svensson escaped him, glad that she got the defendant out, and sure, that is something in his background that perhaps provides some mitigation. But everybody comes from somewhere. There is no such thing as the perfect childhood, or the perfect parents, or the perfect situation. Everybody has challenges. And in terms of this, his mother did everything she could to protect him from that. And the reality is he really didn't have much of a relationship with this guy. And although this guy committed suicide, this was not the glowing father figure that had been there all his life that he suddenly lost. This was just a miserable human being who maybe there was a potential to try and build a relationship with that he never had. And you know what? Paul Svensson is 100% better, and the defendant has the advantage of him. Much better situation. So is that a consideration? The things about his father considered? Sure. Sure, that is a consideration. Does it weigh heavily? Does it outweigh any of these things? Not even close. Not even one of them. Shelby Nealy is loved by his stepfather, Paul Svensson, who accepts Shelby as his own son. Sure, I agree that that's true. How does it mitigate the defendant, though? Like, it is great, and we'll talk about this in a few moments, but it is great that there are people who love this defendant, that cared for him. You know, I'm not sure which would be worse, people loving him or if people had hated him all his life and he had a miserable upbringing, something, because by most accounts, with a couple of bad things, like his biological father committing suicide, he really had a good childhood. He even says so to Detective Anderson. I had a good childhood. But does the fact that his stepfather loves him and accepts him as his own son, does that mitigate? Does it weigh anything? No. I submit to you it does not. Shelby Nealy experienced homelessness. Yeah, I agree, he did. Does it mitigate? Absolutely not. He experienced homelessness because he refused to get any help. He experienced homelessness because he wanted to smoke marijuana and be a criminal. He experienced homelessness because he didn't get his act together to make money and support himself, even though his parents set him up with an apartment, paid the security deposit, had everything furnished. They put him out in a position where he could have succeeded. So the fact that he experienced homelessness, does that weigh anything? Not at all. Number 12, Shelby Nealy loves his children, and he was very protective and concerned about his children when he was arrested and during his interviews. All right, let's talk about that. Shelby Nealy loves his children. He loves saying he loves his children. Well, let's look at how he's really treated these children. One, he's not even a part of the first child's life. And that may be a good decision on the part of the mother, but maybe he cares about her from afar, but has he really ever done anything for Mackenzie? So what about Bella and Oliver? Does he love his children? Well, he loves them enough to strangle their mother, probably many, many times, probably for the last time in front of Bella, and bash her head in with a hammer and leave her body in the tub for many days, not take good care of the kids, because we know when they get to Vincent del Santo in February that they're dirty and messy. Not enough to get his act together, not enough to be responsible, certainly not enough to stop him from driving to Florida and killing their grandparents and their uncle. And then staying in the house with 3 rotting bodies for 9 days with 2 kids. 2 kids who I'm sure loved having a COVID mask on. Feeding them chicken McNuggets, cereal, and pizza. The only person Shelby Nealy loved in all that situation, when he came up with that plan, and when he drove back, and when he was lying, and this and that, was himself. He may love the idea of him being a good father, but does he really love his children? Does any of his actions actually indicate that? I submit to you that that is not there. And very protective and concerned about his children when he was arrested and during his interviews. Yeah, so we asked about him. Great. Did I actually do anything? No, I submit to you, it weighs nothing. 13, Shelby Nealy was a victim of domestic violence by Jamie Avancic. I'm not sure that's established. Looks a lot more like Jamie Avancic was a victim of domestic violence at the hands of this defendant. By his own admission in the medical records. So I submit to you that not established, but even to the extent, clearly he did suffer injuries at her hands. No dispute about that. Probably justified, probably warranted. But to the extent that he suffered those injuries at her hands, does that mitigate anything? Does that mitigate him coming and killing Richard and Laura and Nick to cover up killing Jamie? No, it doesn't weigh. None of this stuff weighs. Number 14, defendant was immature and naive. Everybody's been immature and naive at some point. I'm not sure what we're talking about there, but immature and naive doesn't weigh. During the last 6 years, Shelby Nealy has spent his time constructively, including writing a self-published book. Well, he had a team around him to help him do that. Did he do that? Yeah, great. Is it established? Sure, it's established. Does it weigh anything? No, not in comparison to any of these aggravators. Should Shelby Nealy have any proceeds from publishing his books, he would like those proceeds to go to his mother and children. Great, he's got aspirations. He's got intentions. Who knows if he would even follow through with them if he made any money from his book. But does intentions, do his intentions or stated intentions weigh? No, they do not. They do not weigh a darn thing. There's no quality of mitigators here. Shelby Nealy has received no disciplinary infraction since his arrest. Appears to be true. He's been in solitary confinement. His defense team has made sure of that. In fact, you heard testimony that when there was danger that you might be put in general population, he called them all concerned and ended up staying in solitary confinement. Now, it's not as easy to get infractions when you're not actually interacting with anybody, but sure, he did not. Does it weigh anything? No. No, it doesn't. Corrections staff at the jail have commented, quote, they wish they had inmates as well behaved as Shelby Nealy, end quote. Now, I believe this may have come out through Miss Deliberato, whose sole goal in life is to end the death penalty. And I could be wrong. If you remember differently than me, go by what you remember. But we don't know the names of any of these people. We don't know in what context it was said. It really, if anything, goes along with the one above it about no disciplinary infractions. Does it weigh anything? It does not. I'm sure he was very well behaved from about December 7th of 2018 until December 14th of 2018 to December 14th of 2018 as well. Number 19, Shelby Nealy was diagnosed with ADHD when he was 6, but was not started on his medication until the 3rd grade. I mean, is that a true fact? Perhaps. Does it weigh anything? No, it does not. If anything, it just shows his parents were trying to be as good as possible to him. They were trying to give him as best an opportunity to succeed as they possibly could and knew how to. And what's interesting is he actually starts to do worse after that point. Shelby Nealy was held back in school. I mean, true, but does that mitigate? Does it weigh anything? No, it does not. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, we only got a few more of these to go through. Shelby Nealy was expelled from school in the 11th grade because of his behavior. Yeah, that's true. Does it mitigate? I would say no, it does not. It weighs nothing. Does not mitigate. Shelby Nealy got his GED since his arrest. Okay, that's true. Again, there's a defense team around him and activists around him that are encouraging him to do things to make his package look better. Now, GED, great. Glad he finally did it. Is it mitigation? Okay, sure. Does it weigh anything? No. It doesn't weigh anything. Would have been nice if he had done that way back in 2012 or 2013 and put himself, taken advantage of the good opportunity his parents were providing him and taken advantage of that and put himself on a responsible course at that point. Shelby Nealy got a certificate for a paralegal degree since his arrest. Again, same thing. Is it true? Sure. Does it weigh? No. Defendant has been Baker acted 5 times, first time when he was 19. Okay. Sure. You can look through the records, it happened. But does it weigh anything? I mean, again, there appear to be over and over suicidal threats or suicidal thoughts every time he gets violent with a wife of his. He was diagnosed with major depressive disorder. Sure, Dr. Holmes diagnosed him with major depressive disorder. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Does it weigh anything? It does not. He is diagnosed with dependent personality disorder. Again, doesn't play into the facts of this case at all, really. Does it weigh anything? It does not. He has been prescribed antidepressants for most of his adult life. I mean, sure, but what does that weigh? Nothing. That only shows that people have been trying to help this guy all of his life. All of his life. People have been trying to prevent him from getting here. But he was determined to get here. Defendant is diagnosed with PTSD. Again, same as the others. Basically, he has PTSD because he killed 4 people. Does that mitigate? Not at all. Does it weigh anything? Not even a little. Defendant loves his brother Alex, who had stage 4 cancer. Could be true. I'm not sure what he's done to give any indication that he loves his brother, other than perhaps say it and continue to be selfish. Certainly, he didn't love his brother enough to not use drugs and be a good example when they were growing up, and instead caused a lot of pain.
Non-statutory aggravation.
Overruled.
Caused a lot of pain for his parents that they had to deal with the defendant instead of being able to raise Alex. So I don't know that that aggravator is established, but certainly it doesn't weigh. Defendant scored in the memory section of the standardized neurological testing in the first percentile, which means 99% of the population score higher that he does. We talked about this already. I mean, did we have somebody who testified to that? Yes. Did he get paid a lot of money to testify to that? Yes. And does it weigh anything? No. Shelby Nealy has defendant has had neurological testing that reports that his brain is abnormal. Okay. Does it weigh anything? No. And again, Dr. Woe got paid a lot of money to say that. Defendant has had head injuries which resulted in a split IQ, which only occurs in 4% of the population. Well, not sure it's completely established. I believe Dr. Woe may have opined to that and dated back to the December 2012 head injury, which defendant was still a violent criminal before then, continued to be a violent criminal after that, but to what degree did that mitigate? Not at all, and it doesn't weigh anything. Shelby Nealy has suffered traumatic brain injury to the right hemisphere of the brain, which impairs his ability to regulate emotions, social comportment, and perceptual reasoning. Well, again, this kind of goes along with the other two. We're talking about the same things over and over, really. But who tells us that? Dr. Woe. Dr. Woe got paid a lot of money to look at a couple things and say some very nice or interesting things about the defendant. Like that he's basically average IQ, and that some of the numbers are just unusual. They go in different directions that we don't always see all the time. In 2012, at the age of 19, defendant was choked, fell, and hit his head, causing intracranial bleeding with neurosurgery consult recommended, but he left the hospital. Yeah, I guess we didn't focus on that part of it. He was in the hospital. They said, let's keep him under 24-hour observation. And the defendant decided, nah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave against medical advice. But he wasn't choked. There's no indication that happened. I read you some of the things. There's other things in there. He got hit because he got in a fight because he was collecting a debt. Does that weigh anything? That he got himself into trouble? No. He has expressed concern for the safety of his family and friends. This is a fun one. Expressed concern for the safety of his family and friends. He expressed a lot of concern for Richard and Laura and Nick and Jamie. All kinds of concern for them. Even after they were dead. It was so nice. He said very, very nice things about them. He practically eulogized them with Detective Anderson. Yeah, he has expressed lots of concern for safety of his family and his friends. Now, sure, when they're serving him, when they're doing what he wants, when they're being nice to him, sure, maybe. Words are cheap. Defendant expressed regret and remorse in his confession. Yeah, great. A lot of good that did everybody. It didn't lead to any actions on his part. So all the things that already happened. Did he express it? Sure. Does it weigh anything? No. He certainly didn't look or act like he was really sorry. Defendant can serve a purpose by helping other inmates in prison. I mean, again, intentions are wonderful. Could he? Just because he could dig ditches. There's a lot of things he could do. Does that mitigate and does it weigh anything? No. And finally, defendant loves his mother and is loved by his mother. This is a lot like what we talked about with Paul. Perhaps he does love his mother. He certainly didn't do a lot over the course of his life up until now to really express that. In fact, largely expressed the opposite. Is he loved by his mother? I'm sure he is. That woman, she seems like a great woman and, again, has done a lot. But does it mitigate or really weigh anything? Unfortunately not. So let's talk about some of that. There's a couple things, and I'm almost done. Now, defense is going to get up here and talk to you in a moment, and I don't know what they're going to say. They could say any number of things. They could talk about some of the things I've talked about. They could talk about different things. But I will not have an opportunity to speak to you again. This is it. I won't have an opportunity to respond to anything that they say. It does not mean that there is not a response. If there are lots of fun pages in some of those records, if they point things out, does not mean that there is not a response. It does not mean that I just don't want to go through 6,000 pages of records with you. I'm sure you're quite happy that I'm only talking for the 2.5 to 3 hours that I've been talking. But I do expect, I don't know, but I expect that the defense may show you photos. They're going to show you photos of the defendant when he was with his family and they were happy. I expect they may even show you photos of a depiction of what the execution chamber may look like. I never tried to sugarcoat this for you. We are here to determine whether this defendant should be executed, whether the state of Florida should be allowed to kill him. And I submit to you that those are appeals to emotion, pulling on your heartstrings, really have no place. So I also expect, I don't know, maybe they won't, but I expect, based on what Mr. Brunvin said in jury selection, that they're going to appeal to mercy. Let's talk briefly about that. Boil mercy down, what is it? Unmerited favor. Something you getting something you don't deserve. Let's take a counterexample. If it's not mercy if you're getting something you do deserve. If I go steal something from Walmart and Mr. Doeg's up here demanding the death penalty, all of you would say, no. It's not deserved in this situation. There's no appeal to mercy. But in a situation where I did deserve the death penalty, that's where you appeal to mercy. Now, what is justice? Getting what you deserve. And I submit to you that there's a saying in government that we have is very generous to spend other people's money, right? Like I can be generous all day long spending other people's money. I'm the most generous guy you've ever met when it's Mr. Doeg's money that I'm spending. I submit to you, it's cheap to be merciful with other people's family members. And that mercy is not...
Yes, you may.
So ladies and gentlemen, a couple of things the judge is going to instruct you on. Your decision should not be based on sympathy for anyone, because you feel sorry for anyone, or because you're angry at anyone. We're not asking you to sentence this defendant to death because we're angry at him, or because you should be angry at it. Now, there's a lot of reason to be angry at him, but that's not the reason. Similarly, there's a lot of people to feel sorry for in this situation. Sure, you heard from a lot of the family of the victims. You also heard from the defendant's family. And they're all of them have been victimized by what the defendant has done. Defendant's parents, his family members, all of them. He has left in his life a complete wreckage of people around him. And there's a lot of things to feel sorry for about that. But that is not why we're asking you to sentence him to death. It's not lightly. We've taken 2 weeks to present evidence and testimony to you so that you understand the situation, so that you know the facts. It's not lightly that we do all that, but I submit to you, it should be easily and firmly that you deliberate and find that this defendant should be sentenced to death. Now, it is only necessary that 8 of you determine that he is sentenced to death. And the judge is going to do a great job in instructing you about the different findings. First, you find that the aggravators are committed for each victim. You go through and find whether the aggravators have been proven. And I submit to you, they're all so easy in this situation. All of them are proven. Then you weigh those aggravators, which I've given you examples and we went through it together. You weigh them and none of the mitigating circumstances here come close to outweighing even one of these aggravators. And then you determine if the appropriate sentence.
All right, members of the jury, obviously we've been discussing the law the whole time. After the closing arguments are concluded, I will instruct you on the law again. And the verdict forms are pretty self-explanatory as to what you have to do. So please rely on the jury instructions at the end of the case here. All right, you may conclude now.
And then ultimately you get to the decision, should the defendant be sentenced to death? Is that the appropriate punishment for what he has done? And again, I've gone over it now, ad nauseum. Absolutely. You can't get around this. If he had just killed Richard, he'd be looking at a life sentence. But he went beyond and beyond and beyond. And so we're asking you, now again, with as few as 8, then the defendant can be sentenced to death. If fewer than 8, then it ends right here, he gets life in prison. But if as few as 8 determine that he should be sentenced to death, then the proceedings go forward. But I'm asking you, there's no reason for you not to unanimously come back with one voice as a jury to determine that this defendant, what he has done, the crimes that he has committed, the people that he has killed, and the aggravators that he has accumulated, that he has earned for himself the ultimate punishment that the state can give, and that is that he be executed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sarabia. All right, members of the